Today we're diving into 10 players that are screaming breakout in 2025. I'm talking league winners here. These are the guys you draft in round 8 and laugh at your league mates all season long. We're covering wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, and even a tight end who's been on a milk carton for 2 years, but is potentially ready to eat. Let's get into it. Let's start with a big name who didn't live up to the rookie hype last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, I know, the stats didn't pop, but let's take a little bit deeper look here. Even in a down year, the dude was separating like a vet. He had an above average separation score on all but 3 routes, and his success rate, 73% versus man, 76% versus press, and 81% versus zone. The issue? Arizona basically stapled him to the outside. 80% of his snaps were out wide and on the line of scrimmage. That's not how you use your alpha wide receiver in 2025. Think about how teams move guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb around. Pre-snap motion, slot mismatches, creative usage. The Cardinals did none of that. But with a year under his belt, more comfort in this system, and better usage by the Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr. could be in store for a massive year 2 breakout. I am buying the dip on Harrison Jr. in 2025. Next up, Breece Hall. And listen, if you were sweating that trade rumor when Aaron Glenn took over, kind of like I was, we can all chill out now. Apparently, that was just smoke. New offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand is talking about him like a 3-down workhorse, and Hall himself said last year his knee injury was more serious than we knew. Last year, he was playing 70% or more of the snaps in every game, but after the injury and the week off, that dropped like a cliff. But now he said he's healthy, 100%, his words, and he's got Justin Fields next to him, which is huge for running backs. Just ask guys like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, or James Cook what a running QB can do for your box count. Not to mention, Fields is already hyping his pass-catching abilities, and this guy is still only 23 years old. The workload is potentially there. The talent has never left. If you can get this guy in the 4th round of your fantasy drafts, you have to take that and run. All right, back to wide receivers. Let's talk Jameson Williams, because someone in Detroit is losing their mind over him. That someone? New offensive coordinator John Morton. His actual quote about Jameson Williams: unbelievable. I'm so excited to see him this year. It's going to be a breakout year. I just can't wait, man. I mean, if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. But even when you look at it last year, he was quietly pretty good. He went over 1,000 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns in just 15 games. He's still only 24 years old. And sure, he's not the wide receiver 1 on this team. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown still. But he's a high-end wide receiver 2 with nuclear weekly upside. Don't be surprised if he clears 1,200 yards this year and drops a couple of 30-point weeks. He really does have that kind of juice in 2025. Now let's talk about a guy who was every bit the prospect Marvin Harrison was, but got buried in a bad situation: Rome Odunze. Coming into 2025, myself and a lot of people were very excited to see him getting more run out of the slot. That wasn't until the Bears drafted Luther Burden and Colston Loveland, both of whom are guys that need to play out of the slot. But now, we're talking about these guys dealing with injuries. They have missed most or all of minicamp and OTAs, and head coach Ben Johnson is talking about losing trust, not only in these guys, but the teammates losing trust in these guys. But guess who's still healthy and ready to produce? Rome Odunze. He's already good enough to win on the outside, but if he ends up with more run in the slot, look out, he has the potential to be a massive year 2 breakout. Not to mention, Keelan Allen is vacating 121 targets from this offense. And if Caleb Williams levels up, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, Odunze might be the biggest year 2 wide receiver steal in all of fantasy this year. With new head coach Ben Johnson and potentially moving into the slot, Odunze is going to feast in 2025. All right, back to running back. Let's talk Kenneth Walker. What I love about Walker's situation this year is that Seattle brought in Clint Kubiak to be the offensive coordinator. And if you haven't heard me talk about this yet, last year his state's offense ran outside zone on almost half their plays, 3rd most in the NFL. Why does this matter? Because Kenneth Walker thrives on outside zone. Last year, he averaged 4.7 yards per carry on outside zone runs versus just 3.7 on gap runs. And this is still a good running back. He was top 5 in juke rate last year and top 15 in evaded tackles. And Mike McDonald has already said they want to be a team that leans on the running game and pound the rock. And let's not forget, this guy is still only 24 years old, still in the prime of his career. If Kubiak unleashes him, which I think he's going to do, we're going to finally see Kenneth Walker have that breakout RB1 season we've been waiting for all these years. And this year, you're drafting him basically at his floor in round 5. And if you're ready to get your fantasy football fix on and start drafting right now, you got to check out UnderdogFantasy.com. They have best ball drafts going on all off season long, including their flagship Best Ball Mania 6, which is going to make multiple millionaires in 2025. Just go to UnderdogFantasy.com, join using promo code ENDGAME, because not only is that going to get you a free pick that you can use among any sport, but also up to $1,000 in bonus cash that you can use to start drafting right now. Now, another guy I've talked about a lot this offseason, Ricky Pearsall. Last year, 36% of his snaps came from the slot, but with Deebo Samuel gone, we could potentially see that number get closer to 50%. And let's not forget, wide receiver 1, Brandon Ayuk, coming off ACL, might not be ready to start the season, might not even be back before week 5. We could potentially be looking at Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings as the number 1 and number 2 wide receivers to start the season. And sure, Jennings is probably going to get more of the splash plays, but Pearsall, I think he's going to get the volume. And look at the way he ended the season last year. 8 catches, 141 yards and a touchdown, then 6 catches, 69 yards and a touchdown. And remember, he only played over 70% of the snaps in 4 games because he was recovering from getting shot in the offseason. Now, he's fully healthy and has a full-time role. And if Ayuk does miss significant time, Ricky Pearsall has a real shot to be the wide receiver 1 in what should still be one of the best offenses in San Francisco. All right, DeAndre Swift truthers, if there's any of you left, you've waited long enough. 2025 might finally be the season. He's the clear running back 1 in Chicago, coming off a season where he had almost 300 touches. The problem last year was he averaged only 3.8 yards per carry behind one of the worst offensive lines. But the Bears have improved that offensive line drastically, and of course, getting Ben Johnson, who knows DeAndre Swift from the Detroit years, is going to be huge to let him cook. And if Swift gets back to more like his career average of 4.5 yards per carry, we're talking about a potentially 1,200 plus yard running back who can also catch 40 to 50 passes and can get 8 to 10 touchdowns. Swift is barely being drafted inside the top 90 players right now in fantasy drafts, and that is way too low for the potential RB1 on what could be one of the league's best offenses. All right, you want late round QB value? You want upside? Here's your guy, Justin Fields. Look, the Jets are all in on this guy. There is no competition for him here as a starter. And when you look at it last year, in the 6 games before the Steelers benched him for Russell Wilson, he ran for 50-plus yards in half of those games, and he also had 5 rushing touchdowns in 6 games. The problem was the Steelers put him in a box throwing the football. The Jets, they're going to open it. This is a guy who averaged 18.4 and 20.5 fantasy points per game when he was in Chicago. He could realistically get 3,000 passing yards, 800 plus rushing yards, and double-digit rushing touchdowns. In today's fantasy football, that kind of rushing upside just doesn't exist this late in fantasy drafts, but here we are. Justin Fields is an absolute value in 2025, and I think he's ready to have a breakout season with the New York Jets. But if Fields isn't a guy you want to take a chance on, maybe you're willing to take a chance on Caleb Williams this year. Yes, year 1 was a letdown, but he still threw for over 3,500 yards, ran for nearly 500 yards, and scored 20 touchdowns. The problem? He took 68 sacks. That was 3rd most in NFL history. But as I said when I talked about DeAndre Swift, this offensive line is much better. And if Odunze breaks out like we think, Caleb's going to break out with him. And let's not forget, Ben Johnson saved Jared Goff's career when he went to Detroit. You're telling me he can't get a year 2 breakout from one of the best quarterback prospects we've seen since Andrew Luck? Caleb is this year's late round QB who could finish top 8 if everything breaks right. And look, worst case, if he doesn't, if he still struggles, you drop him and stream another quarterback. All right, finally, I mentioned in the introduction I was going to talk about a tight end who's a screaming post-hype breakout, and that is Dalton Kincaid. Last year was weird. His numbers somehow got worse from year 1 to year 2, but the usage, that was still elite. He was 8th in target share, 7th in target rate among tight ends. And who else is there in Buffalo catching passes? They have no legit wide receiver 1. This offense is begging for someone to step up. And unlike last year where you had to draft him as a top 5 tight end, this year he's going as a tight end 15. You're literally getting him with your last pick. Not to mention he's entering year 3. Not all tight ends can come out of the gate swinging like Brock Bowers did in year 1. Most of these guys need time to develop. Dalton Kincaid is still a talented player. He's still in a great situation. Maybe he just needed time. I think 2025 is going to be his year. There's 10 breakout players who could win your league in 2025, but if you're actually going to win your fantasy league, you need to know way more than 10 breakouts. Don't worry, we got you covered. All the videos you need to dominate this year you can find right here.